We've been here hanging out, Mark Istock alongside Michelle Montaigne and Coach Glenn Stretch Smith. I feel like we all know each other better now because we just sat through one of the more meandering introductory press conferences that you'll ever see. We heard from Brian Schottenheimer first, which I thought was a little bit of a surprise. I thought Jerry would really set the table before we got to Coach Schottenheimer, but he talked about his legacy as a kid who grew up in a football family. Of course, his dad, Marty Schottenheimer, a legend in NFL circles. He talked about his experience, how this was the right time. But I was most surprised, guys, by the fact that it took about 20 minutes or so before we heard someone on stage say the word Super Bowl. But there's a lot to get to when it's all said and done. I want to kind of get our initial thoughts. Michelle, starting with you.
I think initially it was good to hear from Brian Schottenheimer to get a feel for how he's going to be as a man leading this franchise. And by all accounts in that realm, I think he delivered really well. I also thought that the fact that Jerry had something to say after every question, whether it was directed to him or not, was also highly telling about not just how the process went along and who they ultimately landed on in Brian Schottenheimer, but about how he's going to have to run his team under the fingerprint of Jerry Jones, which we all know is the case with the Cowboys, but it was blatantly obvious in this opening press conference today.
Yeah, well, Coach, you know very well what it's like to be on an NFL coaching staff and to go through these kinds of processes. There's a lot of considerations when it's come to choosing any head coach, much less the coach of the world's most valuable sports franchise. Did they make the right decision? Did you feel any differently after what we just saw?
Well, not really. Initially, I thought the net that they would cast would be a wide net. I really thought they would take their time and go through, and Jerry kind of got offended, at saying, well, people are saying we didn't interview enough this, or we didn't, at the end of the day, they got somebody in the building that they were comfortable with, that the quarterback is comfortable with, that they think they can transition this football team into being a winner in a fast fashion, using and knowing that they got this quarterback under contract. So I think we can say, well, it's not about the it's about the quarterback. It is about the quarterback.
Oh, it seemed pretty apparent from what we saw, and maybe you saw the same thing. 214-977-6740 is the phone number if you'd like to join us today and share your thoughts. And I know that all weekend long, fans have gotten a chance to weigh in on this, and there's a little bit of pump the brakes for me where I would like to give him the opportunity, one, to celebrate his hiring and the accomplishment of a lifelong goal, being named head coach of an NFL franchise, and I'd like his family to have that opportunity as well. I think as a fan, certainly there are a lot of head-scratching aspects to this. It feels like the Jones family chose the best guy to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach, given the framework of how that team is operated and everything that comes with being in that role. I'm not convinced by any stretch they chose the best guy to get them to a Super Bowl. And maybe that's attested to by the fact that we didn't hear that word thrown around very much. But when it's all said and done, you've got a $60 million quarterback sitting at the press conference that you've got to not just keep happy. It's more about, can you design an offense that can get the most out of him and hope that you've got a defense as well and all the pieces come together where you can win a title.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's what fans want, and the fact that they are now the longest team who hasn't even made it to the NFC Championship game in the league is just telling that this franchise is so far from getting to what all of these fans want, is that Super Bowl. I also do want to touch on the fact that you opened with, the Schottenheimer opening statement, his legacy, what this opportunity means to him. But Jerry Jones opened with, a 20-minute answer, but kind of / monologue about all of the things that he basically had heard since his announcement of this head coach late Friday night. And it almost felt like he was trying to fend off every single criticism that he received in the media because of this hiring, as opposed to even celebrating the fact that this is going to be his 10th head coach, or the franchise's 10th head coach, not his necessarily. But I thought that was really telling, too, in the fact that it wasn't even so much about, this is how we're going to get to a Super Bowl. That wasn't Jerry's opening statement or answer. It was all about, let me address all of the criticism I've received and do it in a way that proves to you guys I actually do know what I'm doing here.
Well, Coach, we've seen a few instances this year where it's obvious that he's heard the critics. It's obvious that for as thick as his skin is.
Mark, let me tell you right now, they get the clips every day. They cut out the clips every day and they hand them out to everybody. If you think they don't read the criticism or they're not hearing what people are saying, you're not on the same page, because they hear everything. They are literally like the birds in the backyard. They know everything that's being said.
Well, we've said some things on Daybreak sometimes that I don't know if I want Jerry hearing it out. But you know what? It is what it is. But we talked about this when we were watching, everything kind of take place. And it is interesting because Jerry talked about this being a risky hire. And yes, hiring a head coach who doesn't have any previous head coaching experience is risky. Hiring any head coach is risky as well. But it really, in a lot of ways, felt like the safest decision he could have made.
Well, and when you think about, you say risk, he took so much risk paying the quarterback $60 million a year. Now he's having to manage that $60 million risk with an easy hire here that he thinks will help him with that risk. And I think Joe and I kind of bantered about this last night, but Joe's like, Stretch, can't pin this on the quarterback. I'm telling you, it's got to do with the quarterback and the ability for them to mesh together and try to help the $60 million investment that he's made.
Well, and so much of that is the state of the NFL right now. When you have a guy in the building and just the way contracts work, you got to pony up a lot of times for the devil you know. But again, we watched that press conference. Maybe you saw Joe Trahan in the audience. Ed Werder was there. Rebecca Lopez is up in Frisco, and Jonah Javad too. We're going to hear from them in just a moment. But I want to get back to the family ties and kind of the special moment. It was cool to see him talk about his family, to talk about getting a chance to call his mom. And he also talked about what it meant being the son of Marty Schottenheimer, a legend in NFL coaching circles for so long, and just really everything it took to get to this moment.